The stars had always belonged to the dominion of. At least, that was what every believed from the moment they hatched from their eggs. For 3,000 years, the race had spread across 40 star systems, conquering some species and enslaving others. Their ships darkened the skies of 100 worlds. Their soldiers numbered in the billions, and their pride was as vast as the void itself. High Admiral and stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Burning Claw. He was old for a nearly 200 cycles, and his body showed the marks of countless battles. His left mandible was cracked and from a duel with a rebel warlord. His carapace, once bright green, had faded to a dull brown, but his 4 eyes remained sharp, and his mind remained sharper. Today, those eyes stared at the main, with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. "Report," he clicked, his mandibles snapping together to form the harsh sounds of the language. "3 vessels have dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, High Admiral," said his sensor officer, a young female named. "They are transmitting identification codes. They claim to be from something called the Terran Union." An's antennae twitched. He had heard rumors about this species. They called themselves humans or Terrans. They had appeared on the galactic stage only a few decades ago, crawling out of some forgotten corner of the galaxy. They had established a handful of colonies in the outer reach, a region of space that the Dominion considered beneath its interest. Until now. "Put them on screen," and ordered. The shifted and the 3 Terran vessels appeared, and stared at them for a long moment. Then he made a sound that was the equivalent of a laugh. It was a dry, clicking noise, like bones rattling in a metal box. The ships were tiny. Each vessel was perhaps 300 meters long. They were shaped like elongated teardrops with smooth hulls painted in white and blue. They had no visible weapons arrays, no plasma cannons jutting from their sides, no missile tubes or torpedo launchers. They looked like cargo ships. No, they looked like pleasure yachts. They looked like toys. Around the entire command deck erupted in laughter. Officers clicked and chittered, their mandibles clacking together in amusement. Some made gestures of disbelief. Others simply stared at the screen with their mouths hanging open. "Is this a joke?" asked Fleet Commander and second in command. He was a massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with a carapace the color of dried blood. "Did they send children to negotiate with the Dominion?" "Perhaps they do not have any real ships," suggested. "Perhaps these are the best they have." "Then they are even more pathetic than I thought," and said. He settled back into his command throne, a massive chair made from the bones of a conquered enemy. "Open a channel. Let us hear what these insects have to say." The flickered again, and a new image appeared. It showed the interior of one of the Terran ships. The bridge was small but clean, filled with glowing screens and blinking lights, and in the center stood a creature that An had never seen before. The human was small, much smaller than An. She stood barely 2 meters tall, with soft pink skin and a mane of black hair tied behind her head. She had only 2 eyes, both of them a strange blue-green color. She wore a uniform of dark blue with silver markings on the shoulders, and she was smiling. "This is Commander Vance of the Terran Union vessel Hopeful Dawn," she said. Her voice was calm and clear, though her mouth moved in strange ways that An found unsettling. The translation software turned her alien words into proper speech. "We have come in peace to discuss trade agreements and diplomatic relations with the Dominion of." And leaned forward. "You discuss with us," he made the laughing sound again. "Little creature, do you know where you are? Do you know who we are?" "I know exactly where I am, High Admiral," Commander Vance replied. Her smile did not waver. "I am in the system at the edge of Dominion space, and I know who you are. You are the leaders of a powerful empire. That is why we are here. Powerful empires make good trading partners." "Trading partners," repeated with disgust. "We do not trade with lesser species. We take what we want." "That is unfortunate," Commander Vance said. "The Terran Union has much to offer: technology, resources, knowledge. We were hopping for a mutually beneficial relationship." And rose from his throne and walked closer to the. He studied the human female with all four of his eyes. She was so small, so fragile. He could see the blood moving beneath her thin skin. He could break her in half with one claw. "Let me explain something to you, little Terran," he said slowly. "The Dominion does not have mutually beneficial relationships. The Dominion conquers. The Dominion rules. Other species serve us or they die. That is the way of the universe. That is the only way." Commander Vance nodded slowly, as if considering his words. "I see. And what if a species does not wish to serve?" "Then they are destroyed," and spread his claws wide. "Look around you, Terran. I have 200 warships in this system alone. The Dominion has thousands more. What do you have? 3 tiny vessels that look like they could not survive a solar flare." "Appearances can be deceiving, High Admiral." "Can they?" And turned to his crew. "Do you hear this? The prey thinks it can frighten the predator." The command deck erupted in laughter again, when it died down and turned back to the screen. "Go home, little Terran. Go back to your small worlds and your small ships. Tell your leaders that the Dominion is not interested in trade, but be grateful. I am feeling generous today. I will let you leave with your lives." Commander Vance's smile finally faded, but she did not look afraid. She looked disappointed, as if she had expected better from him. "Before I go, High Admiral, I must ask formally. The Terran Union seeks peaceful relations with the Dominion of. We offer fair trade, cultural exchange, and mutual cooperation. Will you accept?" And was already turning away. "We will not. I will need that answer in writing. Official diplomatic protocol requires." "I do not care about your protocols," and snapped. He spun back to face the screen, his eyes blazing with anger. "You come to my space in your pathetic little ships and you dare to make demands. You dare to speak of protocols." Commander Vance did not flinch. "I am simply following proper procedure, High Admiral, nothing more." Something about her calmness made him uneasy. Prey did not act this way. Prey cowered. Prey begged. Prey tried to run. This human stood there as if she were the one in control of the situation. He pushed the feeling aside. It was ridiculous. She was one small creature on one small ship. He was the High Admiral of the Grand Fleet. "You want a written response," he said coldly. "Very well. I will have my ambassador send one. Now get out of my space before I change my mind about letting you live." The screen went dark, and stood there for a moment, staring at the blank. Around him, his officers were still laughing and making jokes about the tiny Terran ships, but the High Admiral was no longer laughing. Something bothered him. He could not say what it was. Perhaps it was the way the human had looked at him. Perhaps it was the strange confidence in her voice. Perhaps it was simply the fact that she had come at all. Why would such a weak species send ships to the Dominion? Did they not know what would happen? Did they not understand how dangerous it was? Unless they did know, unless they had come anyway. And shook his head. He was overthinking this. The humans were clearly fools. Their tiny fleet proved it. No intelligent species would send such weak vessels to negotiate with the most powerful empire in the sector. "Fleet Commander," he said. "Yes, High Admiral." "Send ambassador to deal with these Terrans. Tell him to deliver our standard terms." Mandibles clicked with pleasure. The standard terms meant total surrender. It meant the humans would have to give up all their colonies, pay tribute to the Dominion, and submit to rule. It was not really an offer. It was an insult. "And make sure the ambassador takes his time. Let the humans wait. Let them understand their place." "It will be done, High Admiral." 2 days passed. The Terran ships remained at the edge of the system, holding position. They did not try to leave. They did not try to approach. They simply waited. And found this annoying. He had expected them to flee after his warning, or at least to send more messages begging for an audience. But they did nothing. They just sat there in the darkness of space, patient and silent. On the third day, Ambassador finally boarded a shuttle and made his way to the Terran flagship. Was not a high-ranking ambassador. He was, in fact, one of the lowest members of the diplomatic corps. Sending him to meet with the Terrans was itself an insult. It showed how little the Dominion thought of them. And watched the shuttle's progress on his. He saw it approach the largest of the Terran vessels. He saw the tiny airlock open to receive the ambassador, and then he waited. An hour passed, then two, and grew impatient. "What is taking so long?" he demanded. "It should not take this long to deliver simple terms." "Perhaps they are arguing," High Admiral suggested. "Perhaps they do not like what they are hearing." "They do not have to like it, they have to accept it." Another hour passed. Finally, the shuttle emerged from the Terran ship and began its journey back to the fleet, and waited until Ambassador was standing before him on the command deck. Was small, his carapace a pale yellow color. He looked nervous, though he was trying to hide it. Well, and demanded, "Did they accept?" They did not, High Admiral." Silence fell over the command deck, N's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, they did not?" Swallowed, a human gesture he had apparently picked up from his meeting. "The Terran commander listened to our terms. She was very polite. She asked many questions about the specific requirements. And then she said she would need to report this to something called Earth Command. She asked us to wait while she consulted with her superiors." "She asked us to wait." "Yes, High Admiral." And could not believe what he was hearing. A tiny species with tiny ships had just told the Dominion of to wait, as if they were equals, as if they had any right to make such a request. "Did you explain to her what would happen if they refused?" asked. "Did you tell them that we would destroy their ships and enslave their people?" "I did, Fleet Commander. I was very clear." "And—" hesitated, she said that she appreciated my honesty. And then she smiled and offered me something called coffee. I did not drink it. The command deck was silent. No one was laughing anymore. And walked slowly toward Ambassador. The smaller cowered before him. "You are telling me," and said softly, "that you delivered the terms of surrender to these humans, that you threatened them with death and enslavement, and their response was to offer you a beverage." "Yes, High Admiral, that is correct." And stood there for a long moment. Then he began to laugh, but it was not a happy laugh. It was cold and cruel. "They are insane," he said. "That is the only explanation. The humans are mentally damaged. They do not understand the danger they are in." "What should we do?" High Admiral asked. Considered the question. The smart thing would be to simply let the Terrans leave. They were not worth the effort of destruction. They were too small, too weak, too insignificant. But they had insulted him. They had insulted the Dominion, and did not forgive insults. "We wait," he said finally. "We give them one more day to consult with their superiors. If they do not accept our terms by then—" He made a gesture with his claw, a slashing motion across his throat. "And if they try to run, then we hunt them down and destroy them. No one refuses the Dominion and lives to speak of it." Across the void of space, on the bridge of the hopeful dawn, Commander Vance sat in her captain's chair and studied a holographic display. The display showed the fleet, 200 ships arranged in perfect formation around the system's largest planet. "They are angry," said Lieutenant Commander, her second in command. He was a tall man with a shaved head and calm brown eyes. "I saw the looks on their faces when left. They wanted to kill us right then." "But they did not," Vance said. "That tells us something. It tells us they are arrogant. They think they have all the time in the universe." Vance nodded slowly. "Yes, and arrogance makes people careless." She turned to the communications officer. "Send a coded message to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Include a full recording of our interaction with the ambassador and my personal assessment of the situation." "What will you tell them, Commander?" asked. Vance leaned back in her chair. She could see the distant lights of the fleet, hundreds of ships bristling with weapons, each one capable of reducing the hopeful Dawn to atoms. "I will tell them the truth," she said quietly. "Peaceful contact has failed. They are not interested in diplomacy. They only understand one thing." "And what is that?" Commander Vance did not answer immediately. She thought about her crew, her ship, her mission. She thought about the 3 small vessels that had traveled so far to offer friendship to strangers, and she thought about what would happen next. "Strength," she said finally. "They only understand strength, so strength is what we will show them." She pressed a button on her chair, and the message was sent, racing across the stars at faster than light speed, carrying her words to a distant blue planet called Earth. And on that planet, in a room deep beneath the surface, men and women in uniforms gathered around a table and began to plan. 3 days had passed since the Terran ships arrived. 3 days of waiting. 3 days of silence. And High Admiral N's patience had finally reached its end. He stood on the command deck of the Burning Claw, his 4 eyes fixed on the 3 tiny Terran vessels still held their position at the edge of the system. They had not moved. They had not sent any new messages. They simply floated there in the darkness, as if they had all the time in the universe. "This is ridiculous," and growled. "They are playing games with us." Fleet Commander stood beside him, his massive arms crossed over his armored chest. "Perhaps they are waiting for reinforcements." "What reinforcements? We have scanned the surrounding space. There is nothing within 10 light years. They are alone." "Then why do they stay? Why do they not run?" And did not have an answer, and that bothered him more than he wanted to admit. Every instinct told him that the Terrans should be afraid. They were outnumbered. They were facing the most powerful fleet in the sector. Any rational species would have fled days ago. But the humans did not run. They waited, and they smiled. "Enough of this," and said suddenly. "I will not stand here while these creatures mock us with their silence. Send a message to the Terran commander. Tell her that her time is up. She will accept our terms now or face the consequences." The communications officer hurried to obey. A few moments later, the flickered to life. Commander Vance appeared, looking exactly as she had 3 days ago. Calm, composed, unafraid. "High Admiral N," she said pleasantly. "How nice to hear from you." Silence, and snapped. "Your games are over, Terran. You have had 3 days to consult with your superiors. 3 days to understand the situation you are in. Now I demand an answer. Will you accept the terms of surrender?" Commander Vance tilted her head slightly, as if considering the question. "I have received instructions from Earth Command, High Admiral. They have authorized me to make a counteroffer." A counteroffer, and could not believe what he was hearing. "You are in no position to make counteroffers. You have 3 small ships, I have 200. There is no negotiation here. There is only submission or death." "Our counteroffer is simple," Vance continued, as if he had not spoken. "We propose a trade agreement based on mutual benefit. The Terran Union will share certain technologies with the Dominion in exchange for access to raw materials in the Outer Reach. Both sides profit. No one has to die." And stared at her for a long moment. Then he began to laugh. It was a harsh, ugly sound that echoed across the command deck. "You still do not understand, do you?" he said. "You still think you have something we want, but we do not need your technology. We do not need your resources. We do not need anything from you. What we want is your obedience. And if we cannot have that, we will take your lives instead." Commander Vance's expression did not change. "That would be unfortunate, High Admiral. The Terran Union does not respond well to threats." "Is that so?" and leaned forward, his mandibles clicking with anger. "Let me show you how the Dominion responds to insolence." He turned to, "Send 3 cruisers to seize the smallest Terran vessel. I want it brought to the flagship immediately. We will tear it apart and learn all their secrets, and we will do it while their commander watches. Bode, it will be done, High Admiral. On the Commander Vance's face remained calm, but something flickered in her eyes, something that might have been sadness. I would advise against that course of action, she said quietly. Your advice means nothing to me. The connection was cut. A few minutes later, 3 cruisers broke formation and began moving toward the Terran ships. They were fast, predatory vessels, their hulls covered in plasma cannons and missile launchers. Each one was 10 times the size of the smallest Terran ship. And watched with satisfaction as the cruisers closed in on their target. He expected the Terrans to run, or to fight, or to at least make some gesture of resistance. But they did nothing. The 3 small ships remained perfectly still. The lead cruiser reached the smallest Terran vessel and extended its magnetic grapples. The grapples locked onto the Terran hull with a metallic clang that sensors could detect from kilometers away. And then something strange happened. Instead of resisting, the Terran ship simply powered down. Its lights went dark. Its engines fell silent. It drifted in space like a dead thing. They are not fighting, reported, confusion in her voice. They are just letting us take them. Perhaps they have finally realized the hopelessness of their situation, suggested. But I was not so sure. Something felt wrong. This was too easy. The Terrans had been so confident, so calm. Why would they simply give up now? His questions were answered a few moments later. As the cruiser began towing the captured Terran vessel back toward the fleet, the 2 remaining Terran ships moved. But they did not move to fight. Instead, they opened their airlocks. Small figures in white spacesuits emerged from the captured ship and floated across the void to the other 2 vessels. They moved quickly and efficiently, as if they had practiced this maneuver many times before. Within minutes, every human had evacuated from the captured ship. Not a single one was left behind. They abandoned their own vessel, said with contempt. Cowards. No, and said slowly, not cowards, something else. He watched as the 2 remaining Terran ships sealed their airlocks and adjusted their positions. They did not flee. They did not attack. They simply watched, as if waiting to see what would happen next. Bring the captured ship to the main hangar, and ordered. I want our best engineers to examine it. Find out everything you can about Terran technology, and be careful. There may be traps. The cruiser towed its prize into the massive hangar bay of the Burning Claw. The Terran vessel looked even smaller, surrounded by warships. It was like a fish that had been swallowed by a much larger predator. Teams of engineers swarmed over the captured ship. They cut through the airlock and forced their way inside. What they found puzzled them. The technology is strange, High Admiral, the chief engineer reported. Their systems are based on principles we do not fully understand. The power source, in particular, is unlike anything we have seen. Is it dangerous? We do not believe so. It appears to be dormant, but there is something else. What? There is a sealed compartment in the center of the ship. Our cutting tools cannot penetrate it. The metal is extremely dense and does not respond to any of our techniques. We have tried plasma torches, molecular disruptors, even explosive charges. Nothing works. And felt a chill run down his spine. He tried to ignore it. Keep trying. I want to know what is inside that compartment. Yes, High Admiral. Hours passed. The engineers worked without rest, trying every method they could think of to open the sealed compartment. But the strange metal refused to yield. It was as if it was not really metal at all, but something far more advanced. Meanwhile, the 2 remaining Terran ships continued to hold their position. Commander Vance did not attempt to communicate. She did not demand the return of her vessel. She simply waited. On the morning of the 4th day, a new signal was detected. High Admiral, called out, her voice sharp with surprise. We are receiving a transmission, but it is not coming from the Terran ships. Then where is it coming from? Deep space, sir. The signal originated from somewhere beyond the edge of our sensor range. It is directed at us. Anne's mandibles clicked nervously. Put it on screen. The flickered. A new face appeared. It was another human, but this one was different from Commander Vance. This one was older, with dark skin and hair cut short against his skull. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and cold. He wore a black uniform covered in colored ribbons and metal decorations. "This is Admiral James of the Terran Defense Initiative," the human said. His voice was deep and steady, with an edge of iron. "I am speaking to High Admiral and of the Grand Fleet." And recovered from his surprise and squared his shoulders. "I am in. What do you want?" "You have committed an act of war against the Terran Union," Admiral said. "You have seized a vessel belonging to our diplomatic corps. You have held our people hostage. These are serious offenses." "Hostage?" and snorted. "Your people evacuated before we took the ship. No one is being held hostage." "The ship itself is the hostage. It is Terran property. You had no right to take it." "I had every right. This is Dominion space. Everything in it belongs to us." Admiral was silent for a moment. Then he continued, his voice unchanged. "I am giving you 1 cycle to return our vessel. You will also issue a formal apology for this unprovoked aggression, and you will agree to negotiate in good faith for a fair trade agreement. If you comply with these demands, this matter will be considered closed. If you do not—" He let the sentence hang in the air and felt his anger rising. Who did this human think he was? Did he not understand the situation? The Dominion had 200 warships in this system. The Terrans had 2. The mathematics were simple. "If I do not what?" and demanded. "What will you do, old man? You are light years away. You have no power here." "I have more power than you can imagine, High Admiral." "Is that a threat?" "It is a promise." Admiral leaned forward slightly. "You have seen our diplomatic vessels, small, unarmed, designed for peaceful contact, but we have other vessels, High Admiral, vessels that are not designed for peace, vessels that are designed for something else entirely." And laughed. The sound echoed across the command deck. "I have heard enough of your empty threats. Go away, old man. Take your tiny ships and return to whatever hole you crawled out of. The Dominion does not fear you. The Dominion does not fear anyone." He made a gesture, and the communications officer cut the transmission. Admiral's face vanished from the screen. "Pathetic," said. "They think they can frighten us with words." "Let them think what they want," and replied. "They cannot hurt us. They have nothing that can challenge the might of the Grand Fleet." But even as he spoke, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered a warning. The humans were too confident. They had been too confident from the beginning. Confident prey was dangerous prey. It meant they knew something that the predator did not. "High Admiral," said suddenly. Her voice had changed. The surprise was gone, replaced by something else, something that might have been fear. "What is it?" "Long-range sensors have detected a contact. Something is approaching the system." And turned to face her. "What kind of contact? More Terran ships?" "Just one, sir. A single vessel." "One ship," laughed. "They send one ship against 200. Are they mad?" "Perhaps it is a rescue ship," and said. "Perhaps they are coming to retrieve their people." "Should we intercept it, High Admiral?" Considered the question. A single ship was no threat. Even if it was armed, it could not possibly stand against the Grand Fleet. But something about this situation still bothered him. The humans had been too calm, too prepared, as if they had expected this to happen. "No," he said finally. "Let it come. Let them see the power they face. Perhaps when they witness the might of the Dominion with their own eyes, they will finally understand their place in the galaxy." Across the command deck, officers nodded and returned to their duties. The captured Terran vessel sat in the hangar, its secret still locked behind an impenetrable door. The two remaining Terran ships floated at the edge of the system, silent and still. And in the darkness of space, something was coming. On the bridge of the hopeful dawn, Commander Vance sat in her chair and watched the sensor readings. She could see the approaching contact on her own screens. A single blip, moving at incredible speed, closing the distance with every passing second. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Commander said quietly, "it is almost here." Vance nodded. She felt a mixture of emotions, relief that help was coming, sadness that it had come to this, and a small, dark part of her felt something else, something that might have been anticipation. "Open a channel to Admiral N," she said. A moment later, this face appeared on her screen. He looked annoyed. "What do you want, Terran? Have you come to beg?" "No, High Admiral, I have come to warn you." "Warn me?" N's mandibles clicked with amusement. "Warn me about what? Your little rescue ship. I have seen it on my sensors. One vessel against 200, it is nothing." "That vessel is the TDI Prometheus," Commander Vance said. "It is not a rescue ship. It is not a diplomatic vessel. It is something else entirely." "And what is that?" Vance looked directly into the screen, her blue-green eyes meeting N's four alien ones. "It is a reminder," she said softly. "A reminder of what happens when peaceful contact fails. A reminder of why the Terran Union sends small ships to make friends." "You are speaking in riddles. I do not have time for this." "The Prometheus is not here to negotiate, High Admiral. She is here to demonstrate. You have 1 hour to comply with Admiral's terms. Return our vessel. Apologize for your aggression. Agree to fair negotiations." And leaned forward, his eyes blazing with anger. "And if I refuse?" Commander Vance did not answer. She simply reached forward and cut the transmission. On the fleet waited in perfect formation. 200 warships, armed with the most powerful weapons in the sector, the pride of the Dominion, the terror of 100 conquered worlds. And in the distance, growing closer with every passing second, came the Prometheus. And turned to his sensor officer. "Give me everything you have on that ship, size, armament, speed. I want to know what we are dealing with." Worked her controls, her claws clicking against the sensor panels. Her antennae twitched with concentration, and then they went still. "High Admiral," she said, her voice was very quiet, "I think you should see this." The change to show an image of the approaching vessel. The command deck fell silent. The ship that emerged from the darkness was not small. It was not weak. It was not pathetic. It was enormous. The TDI Prometheus stretched nearly 8 kilometers from bow to stern. Her hull was covered in strange geometric patterns that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. She had no visible weapons arrays, no bristling cannons, no obvious signs of military hardware. But there was something about her, something in the way she moved, something in the way she seemed to swallow the starlight around her. She did not look like a warship. She looked like a predator. And stared at the screen for a long moment. His mandibles had stopped clicking. His 4 eyes were wide. "That is not possible," whispered. That is bigger than anything we have." "Sensors are having difficulty reading it," reported. Her voice was shaking slightly. "The hull material is interfering with our scans, but the mass readings suggest what? Suggest that this vessel is the most heavily armored ship I have ever seen. Its density readings are off our scales, and those geometric patterns on the hull, I think they might be weapons systems, but I cannot be certain. I have never seen anything like them." And stood frozen in the center of the command deck. Around him, his officers stared at the approaching giant with something very close to fear. 1 hour. He had 1 hour to decide. The High Admiral of the Grand Fleet looked at the monster coming out of the darkness, and for the first time in his long life, he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. The TDI Prometheus dropped out of hyperspace like a monster emerging from a nightmare. One moment, there was empty space. The next, she was there, filling the void with her massive presence. 8 kilometers of dark metal and geometric patterns. 8 kilometers of unknown technology and hidden power. 8 kilometers of something that made the entire Grand Fleet look like toys. High Admiral N stood on the command deck of the Burning Claw and watched the giant vessel approach. His 4 eyes could not seem to look away. His mandibles had gone still. His hearts were beating faster than they had in decades. Around him, the command deck was silent. Every officer had stopped working. Every eye was fixed on The only sound was the soft hum of the ship systems and the occasional beep of sensor equipment. "It cannot be that large," Fleet Commander said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Sensors must be malfunctioning." "Sensors are working perfectly," replied. Her voice was flat, drained of emotion. "The vessel is approximately 8 kilometers in length. Width varies but averages around 1.5 kilometers. Mass is difficult to calculate. The density of the hull material is unlike anything in our databases." "What about weapons, shields?" "I cannot detect any conventional weapon systems, but those patterns on the hull," she paused, studying her readings. "They are not decorative. They are generating some kind of energy field. I do not know what it does." And finally found his voice. "It is just one ship." The words hung in the air. They sounded hollow. They sounded like a lie. "Just one ship," he repeated, more firmly this time. He turned away from and faced his officers. "Remember who we are. We are the Dominion of. We have conquered 100 worlds. We have crushed 1,000 enemies. We will not be frightened by one oversized vessel." But High Admiral began. "No," and slashed his claw through the air. "I will not hear any more fear. The humans have sent their biggest ship to intimidate us. That is all this is. Intimidation. A show of force designed to make us back down." He walked back to his command throne and sat down heavily. His claws gripped the armrests until the bone creaked. "They think size will make us surrender. They are wrong. Size means nothing if you do not know how to use it. And we have numbers. 200 warships against one. Even if their vessel is powerful, it cannot fight us all." "High Admiral," said the communications officer, "we are receiving a transmission from the Terran ship." "Put it on screen." The flickered, Commander Vance's face appeared. She looked exactly as she had before. Calm, composed, but there was something different in her eyes now, a sadness that had not been there earlier. "High Admiral N," she said, "the TDI Prometheus has arrived. Admiral's terms remain the same. You have 45 minutes to comply." "Or what?" N demanded. "What will your giant ship do? Attack us? We have 200 vessels. Even if your Prometheus is powerful, it cannot defeat us all." "The Prometheus is not here to defeat you, High Admiral." "Then why is it here?" Commander Vance paused for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was very quiet. "To demonstrate." "Demonstrate what?" "What happens when you threaten the Terran Union? What happens when you mistake kindness for weakness? What happens when you laugh at the tiny fleet?" She leaned forward slightly. "You called us prey, High Admiral. You said we were insects. You said we were pathetic and weak. You had a chance for friendship and you chose to spit on it. Now you will see why that was a mistake." The screen went dark. And sat in his throne, his mind racing. The human's words echoed in his head. They were arrogant. They were insulting. And yet something about them made him uneasy. No, he would not be afraid. He was the High Admiral of the Grand Fleet. He had fought in 100 battles. He had never lost. He would not start now. "All ships," he said into the fleet-wide channel. "Battle formation. Prepare to engage the enemy vessel." Across the system, 200 warships began to move. They arranged themselves into a massive attack formation, a wall of metal and weapons that stretched across thousands of kilometers of space. Plasma cannons charged. Missile tubes opened. targeting systems locked onto the lone Terran ship. The Prometheus did not move. She floated in space, massive and silent, watching the fleet arrange itself for battle. Her geometric patterns pulsed with a faint, dark light, but she made no aggressive moves. She simply waited. "They are not preparing weapons," reported. "They are not raising shields, they are just sitting there." "Perhaps they have realized the hopelessness of their situation," suggested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Or perhaps they want us to fire first," instead. "Perhaps they want to claim we started this conflict." Does it matter who starts it? Considered the question. In truth, it did not matter. The Dominion had never cared about such things. They had started countless wars, crushed countless enemies. History was written by the victors, and the Dominion always won. "No," he said finally, "it does not matter. Order the first wave to attack. 40 cruisers. Have them concentrate their fire on the enemy's bow section. Let us see how strong their armor really is." "Yes, High Admiral." The order was given. 40 cruisers surged forward, their engines blazing with blue fire. They were fast, deadly ships, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a small moon. They raced toward the Prometheus like a pack of predators closing in on wounded prey. But the prey did not seem wounded. The prey did not seem worried. The Prometheus simply hung there in space, patient and still, watching the approaching ships with what might have been curiosity. "First wave entering weapons range," announced. "Plasma batteries charging. Missile locks confirmed." "Fire at will," and ordered. The void lit up with destruction. 40 cruisers opened fire simultaneously, unleashing a storm of plasma bolts and missiles that filled the space between them and the Prometheus. The barrage was massive, overwhelming, the kind of concentrated firepower that had reduced enemy fleets to atoms. The plasma bolts crossed the distance in seconds. The missiles followed close behind. They struck the Prometheus in a continuous wave of explosions that lit up the darkness like a new sun. For a moment, the Terran ship disappeared behind a wall of fire and light. The on the burning claw flickered from the sheer intensity of the energy release. "Direct hits," someone shouted. "Multiple direct hits confirmed." Officers cheered. Mandibles clicked with triumph, and allowed himself a small smile. The humans had built a big ship, but big ships could still be destroyed. All it took was enough firepower. The explosions began to fade. The fire dissipated into space, and the Prometheus emerged from the cloud of destruction. She was intact. The cheering stopped. The command deck fell silent. "That is not possible," whispered, and leaned forward in his throne, his eyes fixed on the Prometheus showed signs of damage. Her dark hull was scorched in places. Some of the geometric patterns had dimmed, but she was still there, still whole, still functional. And now, those patterns were beginning to glow. "Sensors detect massive energy buildup within the enemy vessel," reported. Her voice was shaking. "They are preparing to return fire." "Evasive maneuvers," and shouted. "All ships evasive maneuvers." But it was too late. The Prometheus fired. There were no visible weapons, no plasma beams, no missiles. Instead, the geometric patterns on her hull pulsed with a brilliant white light, and something happened. Something that it could not understand. Something that made no sense. The first wave of cruisers simply stopped existing. One moment 40 ships were there. The next they were gone, not destroyed in the traditional sense, not blown apart by explosions. They were just gone, erased, as if they had never been there at all. Where 40 cruisers had floated seconds before, there was nothing but empty space and drifting atoms. The silence on the command deck was absolute. No one moved, no one spoke, no one even breathed. 40 ships, said. His voice was hollow. 40 ships in less than 3 seconds. "What kind of weapon does that?" asked. She was staring at her sensor readings as if they might offer some explanation. They did not. En's claws dug into the armrests of his throne. His mind was racing, trying to process what he had just witnessed. 40 cruisers, tens of thousands of soldiers, all gone in the blink of an eye. This was not possible. This was not how war worked. Ships fought. Ships took damage. Ships exploded. Ships did not simply vanish. High Admiral, the communications officer's voice cut through the silence. We are receiving another transmission from the enemy vessel. Put it on screen. The changed. This time it was not Commander Vance who appeared. It was Admiral. The old human looked the same as before, calm and steady, his dark eyes showing no emotion. High Admiral N, he said. That was a demonstration of our point defense systems. We eliminated your first wave without using our primary weapons. I strongly suggest you reconsider your position. En's mandibles clicked rapidly. He was trying to control his fear, trying to find the anger that had sustained him through so many battles. But the anger would not come. All he felt was cold, creeping terror. You killed 40,000 of my soldiers, he managed to say. Yes. You expect me to surrender after that? Admiral's expression did not change. I expect you to be intelligent enough to recognize when you are outmatched. You have witnessed what our secondary systems can do. Do not make me show you our primary weapons. You are bluffing. That had to be your main attack. Nothing is that powerful. You are welcome to test that theory, High Admiral, but I warn you, if you attack again, we will respond with greater force, and I cannot guarantee that we will be as merciful. Merciful, spat the word like poison. You call that merciful? We gave you a warning. We gave you time to retreat. You chose to attack anyway. Admiral leaned forward slightly. The next attack will not be a warning, it will be a lesson. The choice is yours. The screen went dark. And sat in his throne, his mind spinning. Around him, his officers waited in terrified silence. They showed the Prometheus, floating peacefully in space, her hull still glowing faintly from the energy discharge. 200 warships remained. 160 now, he corrected himself. 160 against 1. The mathematics should have been simple, overwhelming numbers, concentrated firepower, victory through attrition. But nothing about this situation was simple. The humans had technology that the Dominion could not match. They had weapons that could erase ships from existence. They had a vessel that could survive a direct assault from 40 cruisers without significant damage. What else did they have? What else were they hiding? High Admiral said quietly, "What are your orders?" And did not answer immediately. He was staring at the Prometheus, trying to understand what he was seeing. The ship was not attacking. It was not advancing. It was simply waiting, patient and still, as if it had all the time in the universe. The humans were giving him a chance. They were offering him an opportunity to back down, to save what remained of his fleet. Any reasonable commander would take that chance. Any reasonable commander would recognize defeat and retreat. But En was not reasonable. He was proud. He was arrogant. He was the High Admiral of the Grand Fleet, and he had never lost a battle. All remaining ships, he said slowly, attack formation, converge on the enemy vessel from all directions, concentrate fire on the damaged sections of its hull. High Admiral said urgently, "Perhaps we should." I gave an order. But the first wave. The first wave was careless and slammed his claw against the armrest. They attacked head-on like fools. They gave the enemy a clear target. We will not make that mistake. We will surround them. We will hit them from every angle. No ship can defend against attacks from all sides. Hesitated, then he bowed his head. As you command, High Admiral. The order was given. 160 warships began to move, spreading out across space, forming a massive sphere around the Prometheus. They approached from every direction, their weapons charged and ready. The Prometheus did not move. On the bridge of the hopeful dawn, Commander Vance watched the fleet surround the Prometheus. Her face was pale, but her hands were steady. "They are not backing down," Lieutenant Commander observed. "No, they are not." "Will the Prometheus survive?" Vance turned to look at him. Her eyes were sad but certain. "The Prometheus will survive. It was built to survive anything short of a supernova." She paused. "But the will not all of them." "How many will die?" "That depends on how long it takes their admiral to accept defeat." Nodded slowly, "And if he never accepts it?" Commander Vance did not answer. She turned back to and watched the fleet close in on the Prometheus like insects swarming around a torch. "May whatever gods they worship have mercy on them," she said quietly. "Because after today, they will understand why we sent small ships to make friends." On the command deck of the Burning Claw, High Admiral and watched his fleet move into position. 160 ships, surrounding the enemy from every direction. Even the most powerful vessel could not defend against such an overwhelming attack. This time they would succeed. This time the humans would learn the true power of the Dominion. "All ships in position," reported. "Fire," and ordered, "Fire everything." And the void erupted into war. The battle that followed would be remembered for generations. It would be studied in military academies across the galaxy. It would become legend. But those who survived it would never call it a battle. They would call it a lesson. 160 warships opened fire simultaneously. The void around the Prometheus became a sea of light and destruction. Plasma bolts streaked through space from every direction. Missiles by the thousands raced toward the lone Terran vessel. Energy beams of every frequency cut through the darkness like knives. The Prometheus was engulfed in fire. On the command deck of the Burning Claw, High Admiral and watched with savage satisfaction. No ship, no matter how advanced, could survive such concentrated firepower. The Terrans had been foolish to send only one vessel. They had paid for their arrogance. "Maintain fire," he shouted. "Do not let up, pour everything into them." The barrage continued. For 30 seconds, the fleet unleashed destruction on a scale that had never been seen before. The energy readings were so high that several sensor stations overloaded and went dark. They flickered and wavered, struggling to display the chaos. And then the Prometheus fired back. The geometric patterns on her hull flared with brilliant light. Not just white this time, but blue and gold, and a strange color that hurt to look at. Something pulsed outward from the Terran ship, something that moved too fast to see. Ships began to die. But they did not die the way and expected. The Prometheus was not trying to destroy them. She was disabling them. Her weapons struck with surgical precision, targeting specific systems on each vessel. The first cruiser lost its weapons arrays. Every plasma cannon, every missile tube, every energy projector was destroyed in a fraction of a second. The ship itself remained intact, but it was suddenly helpless. The second cruiser lost its engines. Its drive systems went dark, leaving it drifting in space. It could no longer maneuver. It could no longer flee. The third cruiser lost its shields. Its protective barriers flickered and died, leaving it vulnerable. But the Prometheus did not destroy it. She simply moved on to the next target. "What are they doing?" shouted. His voice was filled with confusion and terror. "Why are they not destroying us?" And did not answer. He was watching in horror as ship after ship was systematically disabled. The Prometheus moved through the fleet like a predator moving through a school of fish. She struck without mercy, but also without overkill. Every shot was precise. Every attack was measured. She was not trying to kill them. She was trying to humiliate them. "The Terrans are targeting our weapon systems," reported. Her voice was shaking badly. "They are disarming us. Ship after ship is being left intact but powerless." "How is that possible?" And demanded. "How can they target so precisely while under fire from all directions?" "I do not know, High Admiral. Their technology is beyond anything I have ever seen. Their targeting systems can track hundreds of individual components simultaneously. Their weapons can hit targets with accuracy measured in centimeters. Another cruiser went dark, then another, then another. The fleet was being taken apart piece by piece, and watched in stunned silence as his proud armada was reduced to a collection of helpless wrecks. Ships that had conquered worlds now floated dead in space, their weapons destroyed, their engines silent. The crews were still alive, but they were completely powerless. "Cease fire," he finally shouted. "All ships cease fire." The order rippled across the fleet. One by one, the surviving ships stopped shooting. The void fell quiet. The only movement was the Prometheus, still gliding through the wreckage, finishing her work. "How many ships remain functional?" and asked. His voice was hollow. 17, High Admiral. 17 ships out of 160. And closed his eyes. The battle had lasted 11 minutes. 11 minutes to destroy the pride of the Grand Fleet. 11 minutes to prove that everything he believed about human weakness was wrong. And the Prometheus? She has sustained some damage. Scorch marks on her hull. Some of the geometric patterns have dimmed, but her core systems remain fully operational. She is still combat capable. Of course she was, and had thrown everything at her, and it had not been enough. It had never been enough. "High Admiral," the communications officer said quietly, "the Terran vessel is hailing us." And did not want to answer. He wanted to hide, to pretend this was not happening, to wake up and discover it was all a nightmare. But he was the High Admiral. He had responsibilities. "Put them on screen." Admiral's face appeared. The old human looked tired but calm. His dark eyes held no triumph, no gloating, only a deep, weary sadness. "High Admiral N," he said, "your fleet has been neutralized. Your weapons are disabled. Your engines are damaged. You are no longer capable of offensive action." "I know what you have done," and replied bitterly. "You do not need to explain it to me." "I am not explaining, I am offering you a choice." Paused. "You can surrender now, accept our terms, return our vessel, apologize for your aggression, agree to fair negotiations. If you do this, no more of your people will be harmed. And if I refuse, then the Prometheus will finish what she started. She will destroy every ship in your fleet, not disable, destroy. There will be no survivors." And's mandibles clicked weakly. "You have already won. Why offer mercy?" "Because we do not want to kill you, High Admiral. We never wanted to kill anyone. We came to this system with 3 small ships and an offer of friendship. You turned that offer into an act of war. You gave us no choice." "There is always a choice." "Yes, there is," leaned forward. "The choice was yours and you chose violence. Now you have seen where that choice leads. Your fleet is broken. Your pride is shattered, but your people are still alive, most of them. I am giving you a chance to keep them that way." And looked around the command deck. His officers stared back at him with fear and desperation in their eyes. They had believed in him. They had followed him into battle, and he had led them to disaster. "Why?" he asked. The word came out as a whisper. "Why did you not simply destroy us? You have the power. You could have wiped us out in the first minute." Admiral was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was gentle. "Because that is not who we are, High Admiral. Humans do not measure strength by how much we can destroy. We measure it by how much we choose not to destroy. We could have killed every soul in your fleet. We chose not to. Do you understand why?" And did not answer. "Restraint is harder than violence," continued. "Any fool can pull a trigger. Any coward can kill from a distance. But it takes true strength to hold back, to show mercy, to offer peace even when you have the power to bring death." He pointed at the wreckage of the fleet floating in space. "This is not a victory for us, High Admiral. This is a tragedy. Hundreds of your ships disabled. Thousands of your people killed in the first wave. And for what? Because you could not accept that a smaller species might be your equal. And felt something strange stirring in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. Shame, deep, burning shame. You saw our small ships and assumed we were weak, said. You saw our peaceful approach and assumed we were afraid. You laughed at us. You mocked us. You thought you were the predator and we were the prey. He shook his head slowly. The ships we sent were small because we came in peace. Diplomatic vessels do not need weapons. They do not need armor. They need only to carry a message. The Prometheus is what we send when the message has been rejected. She is not a tool of conquest. She is a consequence. En's claws tightened on the armrests of his throne. His pride screamed at him to fight, to resist, to die with honor. But his pride had already led him to disaster. Perhaps it was time to try something different. What are your terms? He asked. The same as before. Return our vessel. Issue a formal apology. Agree to negotiate in good faith for a fair trade agreement. And one thing more. What? You will tell your people what happened here. You will tell them the truth, not propaganda, not lies, the truth. You will tell them that the Terran Union came in peace, that you attacked us without provocation, and that we showed you mercy even when we had the power to destroy you. And hesitated. That was a difficult demand. The Dominion had always controlled the narrative. They had always painted themselves as the heroes, the conquerors, the masters of the galaxy. To admit the truth would be to admit weakness. But what choice did he have? I agree to your terms, he said quietly. Admiral nodded. A wise decision, High Admiral. The Prometheus will hold position until your people have completed the evacuation of our vessel. Once our ship has been returned, we will begin negotiations. And the war? There is no war. There never was. This was a misunderstanding that got out of control, a tragedy caused by pride and fear. Let us make sure it never happens again. The screen went dark, and sat in his throne for a long time, staring at nothing. Around him, his officers slowly returned to their duties. The command deck hummed with quiet activity as they began the process of organizing the scattered fleet, treating the wounded, counting the dead. High Admiral said softly, the Terran vessel in our hangar, what should we do with it? Return it, and replied, immediately, and be respectful. Those people, they are not our enemies, they never were. Hesitated, but they attacked us, they destroyed our fleet. No, and turned to look at his second in command. We attacked them, we seized their ship, we threatened their people, we fired the first shot. Everything that happened after that was a response to our aggression. He stood up from his throne and walked slowly toward the Prometheus floated there, massive and silent, her hull still glowing faintly with residual energy. They came to us with gifts, he said quietly. They came offering friendship and trade, and we spat in their faces because they were small, because they were different, because we could not imagine that anyone weaker than us might be worthy of respect. We are the Dominion, said. We do not respect weakness. They are not weak, and turned to face his fleet commander. They are the strongest species I have ever encountered, not because of their weapons, not because of their ships, because they had the power to destroy us and they chose not to. He walked back to his throne and sat down heavily. That is true strength, the kind of strength that builds empires that last, the kind of strength that makes allies instead of slaves. He paused. The Dominion has ruled through fear for 3,000 years. Perhaps it is time to try something different. On the bridge of the hopeful dawn, Commander Vance watched the ships slowly reorganize themselves. The battle was over. The lesson had been delivered. Now came the hard part, building something better from the wreckage. Ma'am, Lieutenant Commander said, they are returning our vessel. Vance nodded. Good, make sure our people are ready to receive it. And after that we negotiate. She stood up from her chair and stretched muscles that had been tense for hours. "We came here to make friends. That is still our mission. What happened today does not change that. They killed people, our people. And we killed theirs." Vance's voice was sad but firm. "War is not a solution. It is a failure of communication, a failure of understanding. Today, both sides failed, but failure is not the end. It is an opportunity to do better." She looked at the massive form of the Prometheus standing guard over the broken fleet. "The Prometheus showed them what we can do. Now it is our job to show them who we are. Not warriors, not conquerors, partners, friends." She paused. "That is why we came, that is why we will stay." Nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am." The next few hours were busy. The Terran vessel was returned, its mysterious sealed compartment still intact. They issued a formal apology, broadcast across every channel in the system. Negotiations began, slow and awkward at first, but gradually warming as both sides realized that the other was sincere. And throughout it all, the Prometheus stood watch, patient and still, a reminder of what could happen if peace failed again. On the command deck of the Burning Claw, High Admiral and watched the proceedings with mixed emotions. Pride and shame, anger and hope, fear and something that might have been the beginning of respect. He had lost today, lost badly, but perhaps in losing he had found something more valuable than victory. Perhaps he had found a future worth believing in. The Prometheus remained in the system for 3 days. During that time, the fleet was slowly reorganized. Damaged ships were towed to repair facilities. The wounded were treated. The dead were counted and mourned. The final number was worse than anyone had expected. 47,000 had died in the first wave, when the Prometheus had eliminated the attacking cruisers. Another 12,000 had been killed in the second engagement, caught in the crossfire as the Terran vessel systematically disabled the fleet. Nearly 60,000 souls, gone in less than 15 minutes. High Admiral read the reports in his private quarters. Each number was like a knife in his chest. These were his people, his soldiers, his responsibility, and he had led them to slaughter because of his pride. A soft chime announced a visitor, and looked up from his desk. "Enter." The door slid open to reveal Commander Vance. The human female looked tired but composed, her blue-green eyes calm and steady. She wore the same dark uniform she had worn when they first spoke, though it was slightly wrinkled now. "High Admiral," she said, "may I speak with you?" And gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Sit." Vance sat down. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply looked at each other, two commanders from two different species, separated by biology and culture and the weight of recent events. "You should not be here," and said finally. "If my people knew you were in my quarters alone, there would be trouble." "Your people know exactly where I am," Vance replied. Admiral insisted on full transparency during the negotiation process. "No secrets, no hidden meetings." She paused. "Besides, I wanted to speak with you personally, without aides or translators or diplomatic protocols." "Why?" "Because I think you deserve to understand something. Something that the official negotiations will not cover." And leaned back in his chair. His old bones ached. His 4 eyes were heavy with exhaustion, but he was curious. "Go on." Commander Vance reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. She placed it on the desk between them. It was a data chip, small and unremarkable. "Do you remember the sealed compartment on our ship?" she asked. "The one your engineers could not open." "Yes, we tried everything. The metal was too dense." "It was not metal." Vance picked up the data chip and turned it over in her fingers. "It was a composite material designed to withstand extreme conditions. We use it to protect valuable cargo, things that need to survive no matter what happens." "What was inside?" Vance set the chip down again. "Gifts." Anne's mandibles clicked in confusion. "Gifts?" "Yes." The sealed compartment contained gifts from the Terran Union to the Dominion of cultural artifacts, scientific data, seeds from 1,000 different plants, music and art and literature. She paused. And a personal letter from the president of the Terran Union, inviting the Dominion to join us as partners and friends. And stared at her. He could not believe what he was hearing. "You came here with gifts," he said slowly. "You came offering friendship, and we. You seized our ship, you threatened our people, you laughed at us." The words hit and like physical blows. He had known the humans came in peace. He had heard Commander Vance say it herself. But somehow, hearing about the gifts made it worse, made it real. They had not just rejected an offer of diplomacy. They had rejected an offer of genuine friendship. "The sealed compartment opened automatically 3 hours ago," Vance continued. "Our engineers programmed it to release once the danger had passed. The gifts are being now. They will be presented to your leadership as part of the negotiation process." "Why?" Anne asked. His voice was hoarse. "Why would you still give us gifts after what we did to you?" Vance smiled. It was a sad smile full of understanding. "Because we do not give up on people, High Admiral, even people who hurt us, even people who try to destroy us." She leaned forward. "The Terran Union was not built by conquest. It was built by connection, by reaching out to other species and finding common ground, by believing that everyone, no matter how different, has something valuable to offer. We attacked you, we killed your people. Yes, and that was terrible, but it does not erase what you could become, what we could become together." She paused. "The gifts were chosen specifically for the Dominion, seeds for plants that could thrive on your home world, music that our scientists thought might resonate with hearing, art that explores themes of strength and honor, things we know your culture values." "How do you know what we value?" "We studied you. For years before this mission, we learned everything we could about your species, your history, your culture, your beliefs." Vance's smile widened slightly. "We did not come here blindly, High Admiral. We knew who you were, we knew what we might face, and we came anyway." Why take such a risk?" "Because the universe is vast and cold and lonely," Vance said softly. "Because intelligent life is rare and precious. Because we believe that no species should have to face the darkness alone." She met his eyes. "We came because we hoped you might feel the same way, and despite everything that happened, we still hope." And sat in silence for a long time. He thought about the last 3 days. The battle, the defeat, the negotiations, and now this. The humans had come with gifts. They had come with hope. They had come with an open hand instead of a closed fist, and he had responded with violence and contempt. "I owe you an apology," he said finally. "A personal one, not the official statement that was broadcast to the fleet. I am sorry, Commander, for what I said, for what I did, for the deaths I caused." Commander Vance nodded slowly. "Thank you, High Admiral. That means more than you know." "Will your people accept it, the families of those who died?" "Some will not. Grief takes time." She paused. "But humans are good at forgiveness. We have had a lot of practice." She stood up from her chair and walked to the viewport. Outside, the stars burned in the darkness, ancient and indifferent. "The universe is full of species like you, High Admiral, proud species, warrior species, species that believe strength comes from dominance." She turned to look at him. "We have met many of them. Some became our enemies. Some became our friends. The difference was not in their power. It was in their willingness to change." "You think we can change?" "I think anyone can change if they want to badly enough." She walked back to the desk and picked up the data chip. "This contains a copy of the President's letter. I thought you might want to read it yourself, privately." She placed the chip in Anne's clawed hand. Their fingers touched briefly, human, and 2 species that had nearly destroyed each other finding a moment of connection. "What happens now?" Anne asked. "Now we negotiate. We discuss trade agreements and diplomatic protocols and all the boring details that make peace actually work." She smiled. It will take time. There will be difficulties. Some of your people will resist and some of mine will want revenge, but we will keep trying. We always keep trying. She walked to the door and paused. One more thing, High Admiral. Admiral asked me to deliver a message. What message? He said to tell you that the Prometheus will be leaving soon. She is needed elsewhere. But before she goes, he wanted you to know something. Vance's eyes met his. The Prometheus was not our most powerful ship. She is just the one we send first. And felt a chill run down his spine. There are more like her. There are many more, bigger, stronger, faster. Vance shrugged. But you will never see them because we are going to be friends now, and we do not send warships to friends. She opened the door. Good night, High Admiral. I look forward to working with you. And then she was gone. And sat alone in his quarters, holding the data chip in his hand. Outside, the Prometheus hung in space, her dark hull glinting with reflected starlight. Soon she would leave, and the negotiations would continue, and slowly, painfully, the Dominion and the Terran Union would begin to build something new. He pressed the chip to his reader and began to read the president's letter. 50 years later, a young named Al sat in a classroom on his. He was barely 20 cycles old, still a child by standards, his carapace bright green and his 4 eyes full of curiosity. The teacher, an elderly female with faded markings, activated the holographic display at the front of the room. An image appeared, showing 3 tiny ships floating in space beside a massive fleet. Today we will learn about the Prometheus incident, the teacher said, the event that changed our history forever. Al leaned forward. He had heard stories about this from his grandfather who had served on one of the ships that day, but his grandfather never wanted to talk about it much. He said it was too painful. 50 years ago, the Terran Union sent 3 small ships to meet with the Dominion, the teacher continued. They came offering friendship and trade, but our leaders saw their small ships and laughed. They saw a weak species and decided to crush them. The display changed to show the massive form of the Prometheus, her geometric hull patterns glowing with power. They were wrong. The classroom was silent as the teacher explained what happened next. The seized vessel, the ignored warnings, the arrival of the Prometheus, the battle that was not really a battle. Nearly 60,000 of our people died that day, the teacher said. 60,000 in less than 15 minutes, not because the humans were cruel, but because we attacked first, because we could not accept that a smaller species might be our equal. The display changed again, showing a different scene. 2 figures sitting together, their hands raised in greeting. One was human, the other was. But the story does not end there, the teacher continued. The humans did not destroy us, they could have. They had the power, instead they showed mercy. They offered peace, and slowly, painfully, we learned to accept it. She pressed a button, and the display filled with images, and human scientists working together in laboratories, trade ships passing between systems, children of both species playing together in parks on shared worlds. Today, the Dominion is the strongest ally of the Terran Union. Our scientists work side by side. Our traders share the same markets. Our soldiers stand together against common threats. The teacher paused. We are stronger now than we ever were alone, not because of conquest, because of connection. She turned off the display and looked at her students. The lesson of the Prometheus incident is simple, she said. Never mistake kindness for weakness. Never mistake size for strength. And never, ever laugh at someone who offers you friendship, because you never know what they might become. The class ended, and the students filed out of the room. But Al stayed behind, staring at the blank display screen where the image of the Prometheus had been. Teacher, he said quietly, did we deserve their mercy after what we did? The elderly female considered the question for a long moment. Perhaps not, she said finally, but they gave it to us anyway. That is the difference between the Terrans and us. We believe in strength through dominance. They believe in strength through choice." She paused. "They chose to forgive us, and that choice changed everything." Al nodded slowly. He thought about his grandfather, who still woke up screaming from nightmares about the battle. He thought about the memorial on the edge of the system, where 60,000 names were carved into black stone. He thought about the price of pride. "I want to meet them someday," he said. "The humans." "You will," the teacher replied. "The exchange program accepts new students every year. You could apply when you are older." "What are they like in person?" The teacher smiled. It was a rare expression for her, but over 50 years of contact with humans, it had become more common. "They are strange," she admitted. "They are soft and weak, and they die easily. They cannot see in the dark like we can. They cannot survive in vacuum. Their claws are dull and their carapaces are non-existent." She walked to the window and looked up at the stars. "But they are also brave and kind and endlessly, frustratingly hopeful. They believe that anyone can change, anyone can improve, anyone can be worthy of friendship." She turned back to Al. "They believed it about us even when we gave them every reason not to. That is their greatest strength, not their ships, not their weapons, their faith." Al joined her at the window. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars he could see, was a small blue planet called Earth. A world full of soft, strange creatures who had changed the course of galactic history. "Thank you, teacher," he said. "For what?" "For helping me understand." He left the classroom and walked home through streets that had not existed 50 years ago. Streets built with human help, using human technology, following human designs. The Dominion had changed. It was still strong, still proud. But it was also something more now, something better. And it had all started with 3 tiny ships and an offer of friendship. On the edge of the system, the memorial floated in space. 60,000 names, carved in stone, a reminder of what had been lost. But beside the memorial was another structure, a beacon, broadcasting a message in 100 languages, human and dozens more. The message was simple. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the choice to seek understanding instead of destruction. It is the courage to offer friendship even to those who have hurt you. It is the wisdom to know that strength without mercy is just another form of weakness. This memorial stands for those who died in the Prometheus incident, but it also stands for those who lived, those who learned, those who chose to do better. May all who pass this place remember the lesson of the tiny fleet. Never mistake kindness for weakness. Never mistake size for strength. And never forget that the greatest victory is not the one you win through force, but the one you win through forgiveness. The beacon continued its broadcast endlessly as the stars wheeled overhead and the universe continued its eternal dance. And somewhere, on 100 worlds, beings of different species looked up at the sky and remembered. They remembered the day the Terrans came. They remembered the day everything changed. And they remembered the lesson that would echo through the ages. When humans send small ships, they come in peace. When they send the big ones, they have already tried everything else. And either way, they always offer a hand. You just have to be wise enough to take it.